House, every Arizona homeowner's best friend.
Come on around back, Arizona, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. The outdoor living hour of Rosie on the House. First Saturday of the month, it's the Farm Fresh Hour. Second Saturday of the month, it's the Ultimate Garden Hour. Third Saturday of the month, Milk from the Nursery. The fourth Saturday, Urban Farming. Every now and then, we get this magic fifth Saturday of the month. So what do we do?
Bunny trail.
When we were looking at it on the calendar, we're like, this is Arizona wildflower season. Perfect. So if you're following along in your Rosie on the House homeowner handbook, you know today, March 29th, we've got wildflowers slated for the conversation. We just didn't know when we put this together about a year ago. These have to be done a year in advance because all calendars go to print in the summertime. We had no idea there was going to be absolutely no wildflowers this season. But what do you do? Who do you bring in to cover wildflowers? And the obvious, cream rose to the top. Arizona Highways. We've got editor Robert Stieve in studio. Good morning and welcome to the program. And for the first time in history, well, maybe not history, but Arizona Highways 100 years, You're probably repurposing some pictures for your wildflower.
Well, and it's going to really affect us next year because ordinarily we'd have, our men and women out there scouring the countryside. But you hit it. First of all, can I just say how great it is to be back in here? It's like going to a class reunion, but the only people invited are the people you really like. It's so great to sit here. But, if you're a wildflower fan, we're coming up a little shorthanded for sure.
Now, we reached out to our friend Royal Norman and tried to blame it on him, but he had nothing to do. He said, no. He said, I just call it. I don't program it. But no rain, basically, August to January.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that because it's not, a lot of people think, well, if it's raining in February, then we will, have a nice wildflower season. But it actually backs up to summer in terms of when the flowers start to germinate deep in the ground. And there's this whole mad scientist kind of formula that has to take place in order for us to get any wildflowers. And then on those rare occasions, every 10 or 12 years when we get what's called a super bloom,
yeah, baby,
which is just, you think you've, landed in the land of Oz or something. But we have the exact opposite. I mean, to your point, Romy, I don't recall ever not seeing any wildflowers.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
So we're talking about something that's really special to Arizona, but you don't get to experience it this year.
Yeah,
but the topic was already there. We're like, just go for it.
Well, and I was thinking about that after, when you reached out, Romy, it's like there's still so much to talk about. The desert is still spectacularly beautiful. Certainly when you get those, those gold poppies and lupins and owl's clover and all that stuff, popping up through the ground. And then there's brittle-bush, which is the one flower that usually seems,
invincible.
It's like bougainvilleas, it's just you can't stop it. But there's not even brittle-bush. But, we're actually heading into the season where the cactuses are going to start blooming. And it's of course, not the same thing. And maybe not as popular for tourists, but, we choose to live here year round. We don't, we're not here just for the March explosion of color. So, for me personally, and, I think most of the readers of the magazine, understand there's a lot of beauty out there with or without the flowers.
And you'd mentioned cactus. That I was kind of the back of my mind, our state flower blooms on top of the saguaro. And it's usually the indication of like, you're kind of over the ridge. Like this is the hottest it's going to be. We're starting to see cool down, shortly. Are we going to see saguaro blooms?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I want to say yes, but I'm not Royal Norman. So, I'm not sure, but you hope so. But I mean, you remember, it wasn't last summer, but the summer before where the saguaros were actually tipping over out in the desert because it was so hot and there was so little water. So, I guess it's anybody's guess, but, for your listeners, who, want to experience this. I mean, what's great about Arizona, this happens with autumn leaves too. Autumn leaves start, at the end of August, sometimes on the north rim, and you can see changing color into January down in the riparian areas, right? So with flowers, it starts down here, but then it starts to move up. So, maybe some rain, landed in Sedona at the right time, and maybe we'll get some flowers up there.
Well, we were calling all around. I think you were too.
Yeah.
Have you seen any? So I called out to Spur Cross Ranch in Cave Creek.
Yeah.
And they pointed me to Denise Vasily, who's with, what was it, Romy? The Desert Awareness Committee, Desert Awareness Committee. But she mentioned, she was in Florida. I guess she gave up. So, but she said, they haven't seen hardly anything. If anybody spots anything, it might be along the roadway or in the, washes, maybe a little bit. But she said, like you mentioned, the ones that aren't blooming are the brittle bush, the globe mallow, lupine, the poppies, all those things we love. She said our next hope, you mentioned the cactus, but she also said the trees. So the palo verdes, what's going to happen? Those can be fantastic. Mesquite, and then the last would be ironwood. And then there's a big break until August when we see prickly pear. And prickly pear, we hardly saw any last year.
It was slim.
We haven't had our
could
good
hardly
prickly pear
harvest
for a
enough
while.
for our Christmas candy this year.
Yeah, so
And I love the little ocotillas. They'll be coming out soon.
that's true.
I think the key to all of this, being able to see it in the timing of it, the autumn leaves and the spring bloom, is you got to be an editor of an Arizona Highways magazine, so you could just put a note on your desk on assignment.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's like
You
the
just
gone
check
fishing.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I'm just looking for color, man.
That's right. I'm on assignment.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
This wasn't in the talking points, but it just hit me while we're thinking about it. This would still be a great time to go to those areas that you would generally do wildflower, so that when we do have a super bloom, you've seen the contrast and you can appreciate it so much more.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, with the exception of a couple of days ago when we really spiked high on the thermometer, I mean, the forecast for the next few days is actually really lovely.
Yeah.
It's beautiful spring weather. So you can still take a drive up to Bartlett Lake or head out towards Superior, which are some wonderful places. I mean, that road going to Globe it's such a beautiful scenic drive. Out past Boyce Thompson Arboretum, and you can probably roll the windows down and still drink in some of the beautiful scenery with or without the flowers.
And what's that little community, Top of the World? That you peek out on? That's every time I drive through there, I'm like, this is. I could see myself here.
Yeah, I don't know the history of that place. I don't know. Maybe it was some, commune in the 60s or something. But, you feel like you're on the top of the world for sure.
It's a colorful story.
Oh, you know it. I'm sure you do. Yeah.
It has to do with the red lights.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that'll put you on the top of the world.
Storyville in New Orleans. Look that up.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And as we're encouraging people to get out, let me just bring to top of mind a public service announcement that just hit me this week from Arizona Game and Fish. Rattlesnakes are out. Mm-hmm. Jennifer and I saw our first one of this summer just 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so heads up for that.
I had Julia, our daughter, has some friends coming out and they have little ones. And she's like, where can they go hike in the desert? And I said, I wouldn't take little ones hiking in the desert because it's just too iffy. But Desert Botanical Garden or Boyce Thompson, you could still see lovely things.
Yeah, you can.
And not have to worry about that.
Now,
Over the years, you probably, I don't know if there's an index of articles for Arizona highways, if there's an online, archive of the 100-year publications. So what is that, 100 times 12? Your 1,200 different
Almost
editions?
1,200. There were a couple during the war, World War II, we had to double up a couple issues because of paper rationing, but close to 1,200. It's simple math for a word guy.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of, like when Arizona turned 50, we did a double issue. So it was a March-April issue. So it's actually that would have been February, but simple math, 1,200.
How many articles, how many of those have wildflowers in them?
Well, many. And I'm in the process of working on a book about the history of the magazine. So I've flipped through every single page of all 1,200 issues, which was
Oh my gosh.
fascinating trip. And
What
I did
a horrible job.
I did it chronologically.
This just sounds awful.
Well, I still have a day job, Romy, so, but
That's
to answer
debatable.
you're right. Let me pinch myself. Good point. So I don't know the exact number, but wildflowers have been a part of our storyline for almost all of those years. The magazine for the first 13 years was focused a lot more on road engineering. That's why it has the name Arizona Highways. And I know we might talk a little bit more about the history coming up, but once we started to hit our stride in the 30s, I mean, you look as an editor, you look around at the things that resonate, right? It's like if you've got the Grand Canyon in your backyard, you're going to do a story. I always equate it to if you've got Sandy Koufax in your bullpen, you're going to bring him out every 4 days because, you're a fool not to. And so wildflowers, because they're so unique, I mean, obviously parts of Southern California can get their own version of a super bloom, but it's such a unique thing that, so to answer your question, Romy, it's been, I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you that since I've been there, and I've been there for quite a while, I mean, it's just a no-brainer every March. It's wildflowers on the cover.
We have one
You
picture.
would think it'd be a no-brainer, but 25 proved us wrong.
Yeah.
We have a family picture that goes back about 25 years ago when the kids were young. We were camping up on top of Mount Graham, and they were running through a field of wildflowers. It's just gorgeous. And we call it our sound of music.
That's a thought that came to mind when I heard you describing it.
It's the Von Trapp family
that's
dancing
right.
through the lilies. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. But boy, it's a beautiful picture.
I'm not sure what's funnier, that or the comparison to the Von Tropps. You should hear us sing.
Oh.
You
shouldn't.
That's probably more effective than bear spray.
Maybe that's
Clearing
why
out
there
the
aren't any
woods.
wildflowers. You guys were singing too much over the holidays.
So you had mentioned the Grand Canyon, which is funny because I've 2 articles this week that came across my desk covering Arizona. One from a AAA article talking about the 9 best places in the West to see wildflowers, and they picked Tonto National Forest Bartlett Reservoir as number 3 on the list.
Yeah, I will tell you that it is one of the. So when we're putting together an issue on wildflowers or anything else, we're starting with literally thousands of photographs, and we get more and more every year. Again, next year it might be a little slim pickings for wildflowers, but the images that do tend to rise to the top and that we start talking about as potential covers, so many of them are at Bartlett Lake. I mean, I know that we've had several covers from out there. It's because you've got the rugged terrain. And then you've got the water, which looks so blue, reflecting the sky. And then, you get some combination of, Mexican gold poppies and lupins and all the other things out there. So AAA wasn't wrong. They just had the wrong year.
And then the other one, I'll give you the break to think about this. But New York Post came out with an article, the 10 deadliest national parks in America.
Yeah.
Arizona is has 3 of those.
Well, and I'm guessing you're referring to the Grand Canyon as one of them.
Well, I'll let you think about what those 3 are. All right, as we went to the break, I asked editor of Arizona Highways, Mr. Robert Stieve, what he thought the top 3, or what the 3 national parks in Arizona are that made the National Park Service list of 10 deadliest American national parks. You had mentioned Grand Canyon. That one's kind of a given.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to say. I mean, Oregon pipe cactus, is that on the list?
That would be a good one, but that one didn't make it. There was
I would think California spring break might have something to do with it.
Are you asking
Havasu.
about the other? There's 3 in Arizona, or there's the top 3 overall?
no in the top 10 list.
3 of them are in Arizona.
3 Arizona. Number 2 was Grand Canyon. Number 1 was Lake Mead.
Oh, yes, you're right. For sure, Rosie.
And then number 8 was Glen Canyon. So they all have to do with that northwest.
Glen Canyon
corridor.
houseboaters, I suppose, or something. But, the Grand Canyon, I always think about it. It's when you go to Disneyland, you have to be a certain height to get on a certain ride, And when you go to the Grand Canyon, there's no gate check. You can just,
That's an excellent point.
start heading down the trail. You were saying offline, Jennifer, about, hiking down in your flip flops and a Diet Coke
Yeah.
or whatever, and that's literally what people do because
You're just sucked in.
yeah,
You're just sucked in down there.
well, and and the challenge at the Grand Canyon, of course, is that the downhill part is easy.
Easy.
So it's you're bebopping and heading down that hill, and you say, well, I'm going to go down to that point.
And then you blow out your flip flop, and then you have no
just
shoes.
like
right?
Jimmy Buffett, you blow out that flip flop, but then you have to turn around and make your way back up. And it's I don't know what the number is. I sat on the board of the Grand Canyon Association for a number of years, and I think that as many as 20 people die a year up at the
That's
canyon. Maybe
so
it said in your article.
When,
And you mentioned the book Death in the Grand Canyon. The
Yeah.
first year Rosie climbed down, for whatever crazy reason, I bought the book and read it while he was
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was a very long day.
I announced I'm going to do a rim to rim to rim, and she says, well, you're going to read this book first.
Oh yeah,
It's an interesting book.
It's fascinating, and sadly, they keep coming out with new editions
geez, I don't
because
need
they
that.
just keep adding to it. Yeah, Dr. Tom Meyer is the co-author of that, and he was the doctor on the South Rim for many, many years. And
What a job.
yeah, and he saw it firsthand.
Oh, man.
It was you treat these people, and and again, people don't understand not just the degree of difficulty to climbing out of the canyon, but how much water you need, and you're working different parts, different muscles, right? It's even if you think, well, I run or I jog or something, you're using different
Nothing
parts
like
of
it.
the muscle, and it's a workout.
One of my rim to rim to rims, there was a death. Phantom Ranch was 118.
Yeah.
And then there was a death that weekend.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, the article does say it. So Lake Mead averages 20 deaths a year, Grand Canyon almost 13, 12.7, and then Glen Canyon 8.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's and we were talking earlier off camera and off mic about people standing there taking selfies. I mean, there's tragedy because
That's a real thing.
And I've written many hiking books, and when in the magazine, the first thing you need to do is put your thinking cap on before you go out, because so much of it's common sense, and it's amazing to see how little people exhibit sometimes.
So as somebody's going out, we'll talk about different travel routes people could drive to see wildflowers.
Sure.
Obviously, not a great viewing year this year, but just maybe some of your personal favorite round trips. But what other Arizona highway? Because aside from monthly magazine, Arizona Highways is probably one of the best book authors in the entire state.
Well, nice of you to say that. Yeah, we've been making books since the 1960s pretty regularly. And our guidebooks are extremely popular. I mean, we have a lot of coffee table books, and we've done history books and culture books, but the sort of how-to experience Arizona, and we've got a relatively new book. We've got some old books, about back roads, but we came out about a year ago with a new scenic drives book, which features 100 scenic drives around the state, and there are more than that, of course. And sort of the criteria for us putting them in, a few of them require four-wheel drive, but most of them you can get to in a sedan.
Thanks to our highways.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, more on wildflowers and Arizona Highways celebrating their 100-year anniversary and all the great places in Arizona you can get outdoors, see, enjoy, and explore.
Two people we could never have in studio together.
Get your kicks.
Robert Stieve and Roger Naylor.
Oh, that would be hard.
That would be hard.
I actually think it'd be pretty fantastic.
Holy
They both are wordsmiths.
We could start our own radio show just with those guests. Man.
Such creativity.
Talking wildflowers here in Arizona, along with Arizona Highway's 100-year celebration. And before we get to different road trips people can consider, Gary came in and asked a good question about, kind of a little fun factoid of all the magazine editions. Y'all were actually missing one.
Yeah, it was December 1930, and we discovered that because we were in the process of having every issue digitized and made available to the public. And, because we had to have loose copies. So we had a lot of bound copies, and we just presumed December 1930 was in the 1930 bound, collection. And it wasn't. And there were no loose copies anywhere. And the folks down at the Arizona Highway Department of Transportation put out a press release about it on our behalf. And eventually a copy showed up. A gentleman out in the West Valley had December 19th. He was an avid collector. He had,
Awesome.
I think he had every issue,
Nice.
including that one. And it was like holding the Magna Carta, like we didn't literally send a Brinks truck over there to get it, but he did let us borrow it long enough to get it digitized.
Wow.
The cover was like hanging on for dear life. And fortunately, it didn't suffer any damage in the time that we had it, but we were able to get that thing digitized. Why it was so rare, I don't know. I mean, I've researched so much about this magazine. I don't know if in December 1930, it was still the effects of the stock market crash or something, and it was hard paper. I don't know what the story was, but there were plenty of November and plenty of January, but it was just that one issue.
What was on the cover?
That's a good question, Gary. That's not
He just
fair.
said he had to go through all 1,200 editions.
Yeah, that's not fair, man. Let's say it was Rosie's great grandpa was on there. He was.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So let's talk about day trips. If we're going to go out and explore and view some scenery, and we were talking about the Grand Canyon earlier. One point we didn't make about it is you were talking about the extremes in the hiking, but you go from the elevation change from South Rim to the bottom to the north. I mean, you're thousands of feet and change, and you can do that. In a very short distance in Arizona.
Well, in a single drive. I mean, you were talking about, your Von Trapp photo up on Mount Graham. I mean, you drive up to the top of that mountain or any of the Sky Islands in Arizona. But, for me personally, Romy, that's a good question. I mean, you can kind of throw a dart in any direction and there's something spectacular. I like going down south, to be honest. I love it down by Sonoita and Patagonia. Yeah. And we're fortunate in Arizona to have so many national forests with maintained roads. And obviously you can't go on all of them with any kind of vehicle, but many of them are really well suited to even sedans. You don't have to have a giant, four-wheel drive vehicle to get out on those back roads. And, people like to disparage Sedona because it's, so grown up and there's so much development and what have you. But even a place like Sedona, it's easy you can find places where you can take your scenic drive and see almost nobody, on some of the back roads there. But, I kind of, for me, it's kind of seasonal, right? As it starts to get warmer, you start looking up into the higher elevations. And certainly in the White Mountains, there are a million roads up there, little forest roads, most of them in really good condition. And every time I go up there, I'm amazed at the fact that I'm not seeing anybody. The drive up there, whether you go up through the Salt River Canyon or you go up through Payson, it's a beautiful drive just on the busy road.
Yes, it is.
The road that takes you to the back road is beautiful, and I'm blown away that more people don't do it. But and we've been trying for 100 years. It's like go see these places. So
you had mentioned a lot of them you don't need 4-wheel drive or sedan. So you may not need a vehicle, but some of those aren't for the faint of heart. You mentioned the Salt River. There's a lot of people that come out of that. Their palms are sweating, and one of my favorite drives, but I would rather do it on the passenger side because I get to do some sightseeing. Yeah. Whereas if I'm driving it, I'm focused on the road. But from the 191, when you come off of Hannigan's Meadow down to Clifton, Morenci, Safford area, that cliff drive is fun, but not for the faint of heart.
No, and you talked about earlier about how many times we featured wildflowers. That road used to be called the Devil's Highway, and it
it used to be Highway 666,
right?
Before they changed it to 191.
Yeah, they and it was bothering people at 666, thus the Devil's Highway. But we've been featuring that thing like since the 20s, and at Hannigan Meadow that was built because they needed a place to sell fuel because there was no civilization between, Morenci and Springerville. and they needed a stop. So that was carved out of the national forest, that little lodge there, which is, one of the best places to
talk about
stay.
Get away from people.
Yeah, I was actually up there during a fire. It was a year before the Hannigan, or before the Wallow fire. Oof. And there was a fire literally in the Blue Ridge wild area across the road from Hannigan Meadow. And I was up there staying at the lodge, and they closed the road in both directions. And these wildfire fighters were hanging at, all staged there. And so I was, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, I was forced to stay at Hannigan Meadow for an extra 3 or 4 days because 191 was shut down. And it was a lightning fire. It wasn't anything like Wallow. It was a pretty minor fire by comparison. But, talk about a place to be stranded.
Yes. Amen.
Now, Gary had asked you what was on the cover of a 1930 edition.
Yeah, I'm still not happy about that.
And so this may be another one of those questions, so I'll rephrase. I was going to say, what are some of your favorite articles? That's like picking your favorite kid. But over the years, like, is there some kind of analytic or statistics you'd be like, this is one of our most read or most ordered online archive? What are some of the most popular highlights over the years?
Well, I'll tell you, and there wasn't a lot of text with this, and as a word guide, and I should say that I don't make photographs. I'm not a photographer, but I appreciate how this magazine showcases the best. I like, I skew toward, vowels and consonants generally, but one of the most popular things we ever did, and I know Romy and Rosie, you guys will all probably remember this, but we had done a 50 states issue, and it was a portfolio. It was an expanded, they stretched the magazine out to 64 pages, and they found a place in Arizona that looked just like all 50 states. Oh. So you would take, including Kansas, places that you think might be hard to replicate.
Vermont.
Vermont. And so, we even had wetlands that looked like Louisiana. And so I still get requests for that.
Oh,
It was, and that really, really epitomizes what Arizona is. It's like, there probably aren't other states where you could replicate the other 49 states.
Amen. That's so true.
And so that thing is super popular. We get a lot of requests for a lot of the old Navajo, the cultural stuff,
sure.
Hopi and Navajo, because, the magazine had access to a lot of things, ceremonies and things that were closed off to the average person. And so, including, Barry Goldwater, who was, a longtime photographer for us. He was passionate about, the camera, and because he had built a trust with the people, and he ran the Rainbow Lodge up there, which was, a trading post. I actually was a part owner of that. They trusted him and allowed him in. And we've had many photographers who had that sort of cachet and that entree. So a lot of people like to look at the magazine to look back at some of the great history and culture.
Now, you had said you guys digitized the 100 years. How does somebody get access to that?
It's on something called the Arizona Memory Project, which is a state. It's part of the state library system, and it's not just us. It's all the museums. The Klein Library and Charlotte Hall and the State Museum in Tucson. So it's a tremendous repository with. When people donate their letters to a museum or a state, and there's a lot of photography in there. And so it's all available there. There's a link on our website to it, but I think it's just ArizonaMemoryProject.com probably, or I don't even think it's a .gov, but if you Google
it is a .gov.
Okay.
azmemory.azlibrary.gov.
See, there you go. Can you go in there and look at December 1930 and tell Gary what's on the cover?
On it. And have you ever been to the Arizona History Library? It's like in the Bill Barr Library on Central.
Oh, yes. It's been a while since I've been in there, but it's a rabbit hole, for anybody that's interested in history. And we have so many of those, museums in Arizona. The one at the Burton Barr Library is spectacular. And even the library in Scottsdale has a great historic reading room. And it's fascinating just to pick up. I like looking at what Phoenix looked like in the 40s, and those shots of Camelback Mountain surrounded by alfalfa fields and things, it's just, and it's because you see that and you think, well, that's got to be 300 years ago, right? And it's not. It's like in the 50s even, it's pretty amazing how things change.
It's amazing. It's how easy it is to get wrapped up. When Rosie on the House first began the relationship with Arizona Highways, it was with a fine, fine gentleman by the name of Win Holden.
I've heard of him.
And he took me down to a back room. I'm not even sure it was downstairs or a back room. And he said, this is all kind of like archive stuff. We haven't decided what to do with it. And then he left me. I was in that room, 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
When I came out of the room, all the lights in the office were turned off.
Everybody gone home.
They left me. But I mean, oh God, talk about a rabbit hole. I could have stayed there for a week.
Yeah, and you say that's true too, but it's amazing. Like as I'm working on this book about the history of the magazine, there are so many things that have fallen through the cracks. I'll see something there'll be an ad in the magazine from 1958 or something about a book we produced. I'm like, I've never heard of that book. I've never seen that book. So I spend a lot of time on eBay, sort of bringing some of those things back home. I don't know how many books and things I've bought online, but we did publish a lot, and it's great to have some of them.
Well, you owe me one favor in life. We're moving.
Yeah, I've heard.
For the first time in 40 years. That's why we don't move, because I hate it so bad. But we have given away a library of books.
Oh, yeah.
That I decided, that we just won't have room for them. And we got into a section of the library that included 25 years of leather-bound National Geographic magazines.
Oh, wow.
As well as 25 years of 3-ring binder Arizona Highways.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
And Jennifer really is a what's the word for it? She's a decluttered princess.
Oh.
Okay. And so it's always, is that going in that pile or that pile or that pile? And so I said, well, the National Geographic can go in that pile.
Yeah.
But don't touch my Arizona Highways. It's all 3-ring binder with my name embossed on the cover.
Those are fantastic.
So because I saved them, when the announcement comes out that Rosie has passed.
I have to save those?
No, I just want you to come check my pulse.
Oh, okay.
Unzip the bag and just check the pulse. Okay.
I make that promise for in front of all your listeners.
I'm not a victim of Jennifer's decluttering.
That's right.
Is this the state balladeer? Doesn't sound like that.
That's Rex Allen Jr.
Rex Allen Jr. Okay. The balladeer. My name's
Dolan.
Yeah,
Ellis.
Dolan Ellis.
Yeah.
My only gripe with Arizona Highways, you've brought so many people to Arizona.
Yeah, we've been messing up with that a long time.
Yes, you have.
Do y'all still do the monthly challenge?
Yes.
Yes.
Where is this thing?
Yes.
I was looking in the 100-year edition and there wasn't one. So I thought, well, maybe it was just special for this one.
Yeah, it is. We expanded the magazine to 100 pages and sort of tore out the normal things. It's a stressful moment and a process for an editor. Like, how are you going to encapsulate 100 years, in one issue? And so, yeah, we had to kick some things out, like the hike of the month and the scenic drive and some of those things and the Where Is This contest. But
and explain that contest, because it's a lot of fun.
yeah, it's a good question, because so what we do on the last page of the magazine, we show something that's identifiable. And then, we give away books to whoever identifies. It's we randomly choose the winner. But, we've had some that were too obscure, and we only get, we've never had it where we didn't get any guesses, but sometimes we'll get 1,000 guesses, and then we know we've made it too easy. So it's
amazing to me when you announce the winner how seldom they're from Arizona.
Yeah,
that's what's amazing to me.
Yeah, and we still have so many subscribers around the world and around the country, but we do pick it randomly. Like, so the names are in a hat, so to speak, and I can't see where they're from, and I grab one, and if they get it right, that's the winner. So
that's a testament to how good a job y'all are doing.
Yeah, and a lot of the subscriptions with out of state and out of country are paid for by Arizonans, so. you've got family back in
Yeah, sure.
Louisiana,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example. You've probably sent a few that
We
way,
do
right?
every year.
And we're grateful because it's the subscriptions that keep us doing what we do.
And for photographers, y'all have different events and contests. Anybody that enjoys wildlife or landscape photography, there's a lot of ways to engage with Arizona Highways through that route.
Yeah, absolutely. We do 3 a year. We're just wrapping up this weekend. In fact, we host a photo contest for students. We do it with the Nature Conservancy, so it's only for kids 13 to 18, and it's designed to get kids off the couch and off their iPads and out into the great outdoors. And then we also co-host a photo contest with Arizona Game and Fish, and that one's strictly wildlife. And then we do our big one, which we launch in September every year, and that's open to anyone, any category. And it's a good question, Romy, because we've discovered so many photographers through this photo contest. People, in fact, we're looking at a potential cover for our July issue. Our June issue. From a woman that was a photo contest winner. So and there have been many cases like that. So it's a great way to your point, interact with the magazine.
While we're on the topic of photographers in general, I have one favor to ask you.
Another one.
This one you can answer.
Okay.
This is how do you pronounce the name Muench?
Munch.
Okay.
I don't even know what that rhymes with, but but it's a dynasty, and our history started with Josef Munch, one of our very first photographers in the late 1930s, and then his son David, who soared into the stratosphere on par.
Gosh, I love his stuff.
Yeah.
I've never met him. I know his in-laws, the Esseries, but I never met him.
Yeah, he's a legend. He's actually been contributing to the magazine for parts of 8 decades. He first got a cover in January 1955 was he got the first front and back cover that month. And so not 80 years, but if you count 50s, 60s, there's 8 different decades. And this is his photograph on the cover of our anniversary issue.
And what mountain is that in the back?
That's Babo Kivri down between Tucson and Phoenix. So Gary, that one I know. That's
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Hey, real quickly, since you can't see wildflowers, this is great for hiking. Pick the one hiking trail that you've written about in the magazine that someone should go on.
A newcomer in Arizona. What's the first trail?
Oh boy, that's like Sophie's Choice. Yeah, I actually get that question. It depends on time of year, but I mean, the West Fork of Oak Creek. If you're only going to be here one time, one day, can only do one hike. And people, again, frown on that sometimes because there are crowds up there, but it doesn't matter. It's that good.
You get to walk in the creek, too.
Yeah,
It's
you
cool.
cross the creek,
Yeah.
you get the rocks, you get the trees, you've got everything in there.
And real quick, as we wrap up the final 30 seconds here, shoparizonahighways.com. I mean, you can get the magazine subscription, but I mean, y'all have books, calendars, gift guides. There's all kinds of puzzles.
Puzzles and holiday gifts, we're already thinking about that, believe it or not.
So, well, Robert Stieve, editor of Arizona Highway Magazine, thanks for spending your Saturday morning with us. I know we were kind of a little off the wildflower topic, but there wasn't a whole lot to talk about this season. But it was still a great hour, and we've got some texters that can't wait to go check out this online resource y'all have.
Rosie on the house, every Arizona